You ever have that feeling when you get to a certain point in your life, you think, I'm doing all right. I've kicked a few goals, and then someone like Tamir comes up, and by 18 he's done more than I've done in like the last 20 years. Like, shit. Although, one crowning achievement, obviously, as you can see, is I did tour with Eurythmics, so, one of my favorite bands. So, as Dan mentioned, I'm currently the VP of Engineering at Expert 360. That does take up most of my time. But I've always got an itch to do something, whether it's entrepreneurial or whether it's just a growth hacky thing or even just a hacky thing. I went to a security conference in Canberra last weekend and learned a few interesting things there. But tonight I just want to talk to you a little bit about some of my experiences in I guess, feeding my own personal narcissism and growing my Twitter feed, and the, I guess, challenges I've had in trying to grow it in a way that's meaningful in maintaining engagement with people, which isn't always obvious. So, flashback 2.5 years ago, something like that. I was lonely. I was, had a friendship group, and I'm married, but I was lonely because I only had 800 followers on Twitter. It was just not cool, man. 800 followers. How can I call myself an entrepreneur and a growth hacker if I've only got 800 followers on Twitter? So I tried this thing. Actually, it was Dan Siepen who suggested it. This thing called Crowdfire, which probably some or even most of you have heard of, and gave it a crack. And basically, Crowdfire offers a whole bunch of different features and capabilities, but their central promise of their service is essentially a strategy like this. So what I can do with Crowdfire is I can pick a bunch of people that I can follow, and I can sort of follow it, not in an automated way, but I can get a list of people that I can just go click, 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 follow. On the mobile phone, sitting there on the train, following people. Follow a whole bunch of people. And then if I have a profile and some recent tweets and so forth that is interesting to those people, some of them will follow me back. And then I go and unfollow the people that didn't follow me back. Brutal, right? And even more brutal, I can even unfollow the people who did follow me back. Unfortunately, if you do that, some of those will also unfollow you, so you need to be careful with that little kind of addition to the tactic. But the strategy worked really well. I actually grew my following to something in the order of 3,000 or 4,000 from 800 in a pretty short amount of time. I wasn't tweeting a hell of a lot. I was only tweeting a couple of times a day, and usually it was sort of via buffer, link, little articles and occasional nuggets of rare wisdom that I might have had. But I was able to grow the following pretty well. Everything was awesome. I was totally in love with the service. Until I started to wonder. So Crowdfire doesn't tell me who to follow. Who should I follow? How do I know how I'm going to get people to follow me back? Is it, and this started to become a little bit of an identity crisis for me. In some ways, Twitter is really good at suggesting people to follow as a content consumer. If I'm consuming tweets from other people and I'm maybe interested in Elon Musk, or I'm sort of big on the diversity and tech movement, so I might follow some people that are big names in that space. But actually, what it doesn't do is tell me who might be interested in following me. It's the other way around, and that's not something we normally think about when we think about our Twitter feed. And then beyond that, why were they following me back? There's probably a whole bunch of reasons. Might be interested in some of my recent tweets. Of course, in the software consulting industry, you'd always say you're only as good as your last job. In some ways, it applies to a Twitter feed too, right? You're only as interesting as your last tweet. It might be my banner picture, it might be my profile picture. There's all sorts of variants. It might be the time of day that I follow someone back. It might be the geography of that person as compared to me. There's a whole bunch of factors, and Crowdfire can't tell me any of this. So I had really no idea. It was totally a black box. And what even was my follow back rate? Of all the people that I was following, it was really hard to calculate how many people were actually following me back. I could go back through and sort of do some, rough calculations, but it was a bit of effort to do it. It was a total pain. But actually, it was worse than that. Crowdfire and I ended up in a toxic relationship. I was spending an hour, half an hour every day, Crowdfire was like the needy partner. I was spending maybe doing about 200 follows a day. That's the Twitter daily limit for follows. So I was trying to maximize that. And then going back through and unfollowing all the people who didn't follow me back, 180 unfollows a day. And I was doing that across 4 accounts, my personal and a few other little side projects. Worked it out at my hourly rate, $150 around about. $75 a day I was spending on increasing my Twitter feed. Really? That seems kind of bonkers when you think about it. I mean, at the time I wasn't selling a product or service. This is all just academic in lots of ways. So I thought, well, maybe it's time to call it quits with Crowdfire. And being a software engineer, I thought, okay, let's try and make one. Maybe this is easy, right? I'll just pick a couple of accounts that I might like to follow and think that might get people following back, use the API, done, sweet. And what do you think happened? Suspended. Yeah. All my accounts got suspended, actually. It took a little bit of work to get them back online. But anyway, that was a lesson learned. Always the software engineer, always the growth hacker. Try it again. So I thought, okay, maybe Twitter's thinking, well, I followed 100 people in the morning and then 100 people at night, all in one hit. Maybe they sort of looked at that and went, that doesn't look like a human. So I made my software sort of, act a little bit more like a human. So I made it follow at random times and anywhere between 1 and 15 minutes between follows and up to a limit of about 200 a day. Nope, still didn't work. Okay, time to get a bit smarter. I started to do a bit of research. It's a whole lot of work around, spammers and sort of how to identify behaviors of different followers on Twitter. And I realized after some research that spammers tend to follow other spammers, whereas real people tend to follow either very well-known accounts or celebrities. And if you're not following a celebrity, it doesn't mean you're a spammer, but you've got a higher likelihood of being a spammer. So essentially all I had to do was work out who the spammers were and not follow them. Follow the real people, and I was your uncle. Sounded like a relatively straightforward thing to do, but it took me 20 to 30 iterations to get it right. And yes, every single time I was getting suspended. It was a little bit risky on my personal account, so I actually created another couple of Twitter accounts and started playing with those. But eventually, hey presto, I was not suspended. And all of a sudden, I set Tweet Dreams up. It was this bot that I was writing, and I set it up before I went to bed, and while I was dreaming of Twitter, it was following people on Twitter for me. I woke up in the morning, and I had not a suspended account. I had a quick look on my app, and I had, I don't know, at that point, I think it was only about 5 or 10 people that had followed me back, but holy shit, it worked. I was ecstatic. Couldn't have been happier. And actually, fast forward about 9 months. This is what my Twitter account looks like now. And bearing in mind, I'm not a big Twitter poster. I actually use Facebook for most of my personal stuff. I post maybe once or twice a day, sometimes not even that. But I'm adding 35 new followers a day on average through Tweet Dreams with basically no effort. Occasionally I'll go into Buffer, I'll use their queue feature, or if I see an article, I'll add it to Buffer and it'll go out. Occasionally I'll tweet some jive about Donald Trump and I'll get a few retweets, and that's about it. And I'm nearly at 10,000 followers. And it doesn't cost me very much. It basically just costs me my hosting. So this is a really, it's a basic app. It was a. You ever hear that saying? I think it's a lean startup that says if you're not embarrassed by your first release of your product, then you probably didn't release it early enough. I was embarrassed about the stuff I did when I was 18, but I'm not necessarily embarrassed about this. But it certainly could be improved upon. But what this does show, this is actually a couple of weeks ago. I don't have the latest data on my laptop, but you can see that some of the follow back rates, so Wednesday, March 1st, 202 followed, roughly 200 people in the limit. 50 of them followed me back. It's a 25% follow back rate. And the hypothesis, and it's an ongoing, testing of that hypothesis, but if someone is willing to follow me back and certainly at a high rate, then the analytics that I look at in Twitter indicates that they also have high engagement with the admittedly few tweets that I have. So if I was to apply this to a commercial context, I guess the hypothesis is that there would be a high follow back rate and then a high conversion rate for things that I want to do on Twitter. And certainly I get a lot of activity to my website just through my bio link and only through tweet dreams. So there's some evidence to show that might be true. So actually what I've decided to do, maybe this is batshit crazy because I'm not sure how much Twitter's going to like me for this, but I've actually decided to release it. It may or may not be a paid service at some point. I haven't decided yet, but at the moment it's free. You can visit tweetdreams.net. You can connect it to your Twitter handle. I must warn you, it doesn't work very well on mobile yet, so maybe wait till you're on a desktop. I would have loved to have made it mobile ready, but I wasn't quite prepared enough. But what I'd like to do is give you a little demo of how this works. So this is, I've hidden my main account for the moment. I actually want to use that as a sign-up demonstration, but I've got two accounts that I manage. Coda TV is just a kind of a YouTube channel that I manage about working in tech, and then Debug Film is a documentary I'm working on about women who work in tech. So I have a look at Debugging Diversity, Debug Film handle. So let's go back and have a look at Thursday, March 9. This has only had 5.2% conversion rate. I haven't really been putting much effort into working out how to optimize this, but you can kind of get a sense of what's going on. You can see all the people that Tweet Dreams, I didn't follow any of these people, by the way. Tweet Dreams did it all for me. Shows you the times that it followed them, and it shows you how long it took each person to follow back. So that one took a day, about 6 hours, 1 day. Usually I find it's not instantaneous. It's certainly not within a few minutes. It's usually half a day, sometimes a couple of days. It sort of follows a bit of a bell curve as you go through. One of the key things that I realized as I was going through this process, I needed to make sure that I could whitelist people, because as soon as I'd go and follow like TechCrunch or Justin Bieber or someone like that, I didn't follow Justin Bieber, by the way. Tweet Dreams would go and unfollow them again the next day. So I actually couldn't maintain my own Twitter feed, like my own actual consumption Twitter feed, without being able to add sorry, that's target accounts, in my whitelist. So I just can add accounts to a whitelist. So basically the way that Tweet Dreams works is all in this target section. So I can choose, in the case of Debugging Diversity, I thought that Upworthy and TechCrunch were two handles that were kind of had similar themes, had potentially similar followers to me. And one of the interesting things that's starting to develop as I'm continuing this work is working out how the followers of those accounts behave on Twitter in general, and then how they engage with me to use that to feed back into almost an AI of sorts to work out who might we follow next in order to get a better follow back rate. And actually on my personal account, I've now got follow back rates up to nearly 30%. So it's starting to really work quite nicely. So if I wanted to, there's an account in the States called Femgineer, might be an interesting one. Click Add Target Account. And then you can see that Tweet Dreams it's actually already analyzed that account because it's got a whole database of accounts. It's determined that there are now about 12,000 candidates for people that it can follow. So it'll just go and follow those, up to 200 a day, randomly throughout the day. I haven't got to the point of optimizing it for sort of time zones yet, but that might be the next thing, depending on what sort of follow back rates we get. And basically, Tweet Dreams will just keep working through that, and once it gets through all of those candidates, I might have to add a couple of other handles, and that's essentially all I have to do to keep it running. So if I wanted to sign up to Tweet Dreams, I could go to tweetdreams.net. Really, really basic interface, but you can click Get Started by connecting to Twitter. And I'll need to log in as myself. And I've got a password manager because I'm conscious of security. Hopefully none of you can actually see my password. So once I've logged into Twitter, it takes a moment, it will redirect back to my account. Of course, I wouldn't be a good entrepreneur if I didn't ask your email address. So dan@codadan.co. I've got an account there now, so I can click Daniel Draper, and that'll take me straight to target accounts. So let's stick in TechCrunch again, And it's an account that I think has some similar themes to what I'm doing. Oh, there's an error there. That's handy. And let's go, no Y Combinator. Oh my God. Couple of target accounts. Okay, so now we've got some follow candidates. Click back to my activity and refresh a couple of times, and there you go. It's followed the first one. So I don't have a follow back rate yet, obviously. So TweetDreams has already started working. So within a couple of minutes, I've essentially just set up a bot to go and automatically follow stuff. So that's basically it. I would not be very good on Twitter if I didn't do a call out. Please follow me on Twitter if you're interested in this kind of stuff. And thank you very much for your time. Cheers.